Well, congratulations on the release of Paradise City.
Thank
Um,
you.
so it headlines Bruce Willis and John Travolta, two household names. How did this project come your way?
The one of the producers, Corey Large, is an old friend, and he knew I was looking to work with Bruce Willis. I tried back in the early 2000s with a project that didn't move forward. Corey, he said he had something wonderful in Maui, and we were still developing the screenplay. And we realized that I have a great relationship with John Travolta. What about getting both these heavy hitters together again in a thriller? And it seems to have worked out. We had a great time.
You have a writing credit as well. Was it when the writing process was ongoing, was it always planned to be Willis and Travolta?
No, from the time I actually did one rewrite and realized it was great for John. And then from that point forward, I love writing, knowing who my leads are. So I'm writing into what I know I can do with John. And I had a great time directing John on I'm Wrath. This is an entirely different character. He's the antagonist. And I want to give John the ammunition he needs in these scenes. So I do that as a writer first and then as a director.
John knows how to pull off the villain role quite well, doesn't
He's true to form here in Paradise City. Maybe this is a spoiler, maybe it's not, but John's character is playing a couple of different characters. So he really had fun with the role in that regard.
And for people that are looking to see John in action, they'll be happy to know this is probably his best villain role since The Punisher. The Punisher, he was really
I liked him in Swordfish was one of his great ones, right?
Swordfish, yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Such
So
an
that's quite a compliment. It's a unique role, but I think we're reminded of a lot of the times he's played very memorable villains. There's a zest to a John Travolta villain role, and he certainly had fun playing this one.
and the good thing about John is he never phones in a performance. He always
Oh,
wants to give it
the
100%.
opposite. The opposite. He'll know his lines, the other actors' lines. You know, he wants the set tight. Him and I have a shared philosophy in that regard. We both have theater backgrounds. So John is a theatrical actor. He's got amazing chops. Uh, remarkable fun to direct him in scenes like this.
And it helps as well that he's so talented. Like he can do drama films, he can do comedy films, he can do action films, he can do action comedy films. He could be the meanest person on the planet.
Absolutely right. One of the very unique things about John Travolta is the range of characters he's played throughout his career. It's just astonishing. So the opportunity to work with him again, and sometimes as a director, you're like a mad chemist. It's like, let's put Travolta and Willis together at this point in their careers and see what sparks I can bring up. And I do think they both delivered brilliantly.
This also marks your first time working with Bruce Willis. What was it like to be a part of like Bruce's final movies in his career?
Well, remember at the time, I didn't know it was one of his final movies. We were actually scheduled to shoot this originally before COVID hit, and then Hawaii was shut down. And then we finally got back in a year ago last May. And for me, it was my opportunity to work with Bruce Willis. So I naturally wanted to do something iconic with him. And I think, again, we got the range of what audiences love with Bruce, which is just this natural charm, this machismo. He looks terrific, sounds terrific. He had a good time filming. So, you know, what happened in the time since, we all wish him the best, but honestly, he enjoyed shooting that movie. So we got Bruce Willis's A game in Paradise City.
How long did you have him for on set?
We limit our stars hours. So we tried to keep 6 to 8 hours max. Film crews often work more like 10 hours. And honestly, in the case of both my stars, I have the sets ready for them. I don't like them waiting around, so we can honestly have fun. They're fresh, and we have some momentum to the work. So, you know, we kept it reasonable hours. We focused on a certain number of days for this entire production. It was an independent film, so we didn't have as long as you might think for an action thriller. But my job is to create that illusion.
And you pull it off quite well. Like
Well, thank you.
the cinematography and everything is unbelievable. It also is like kind of a holiday piece. Like you look at it and think, I wouldn't mind going to on holiday there.
Listen, it is honestly our love letter to Maui. I've been there with my kids over the years. My mother, who's passed away now, loved Maui. So when I had a chance to set a film in that location, I hope a lot of our appreciation, the aloha spirit of Hawaii is a real thing, and Maui in particular. And we got to use local people in some of the key roles. So I'm content that we did our best for the island and communicate some of the love we have for Maui and its people.
And if I'm right in seeing this, Branscombe Richmond was in it from,
Yes,
yes, from Renegade.
correct. And I met him first on Scorpion King. He played The Rock's brother,
That's
who
right.
was murdered in opening scene. So Branscombe and I go a ways back. He greeted me at the airport. I'm like, dude, it'd been so long, but these movie connections, they last for years.
So working with Bruce, and you had said that you had wanted to work with Bruce in the early 2000s. When he picked up a gun and was quipping some lines and taking out bad guys, were you secretly fanboying behind the camera?
Well, I was fanboying to do it at all, but I got real tunnel vision when I direct things. So it was all about, does it look, is there kinetics to every shot? Am I getting the best for Bruce and from Bruce? Am I delivering to my audiences? So once it gets going, seeing Bruce walk on the set day one, yeah, I'm like, yeah, he looks terrific. It's Bruce Willis. And here we go. Nothing's going to stop us now. Getting Bruce together in his first scene with Travolta, I had a fanboy there for a second. I'll admit it. They're old friends. They were very excited about working together, and seeing the sparks fly in that first scene. I was a little bit outside myself watching that scene.
Did you know yourself when you were filming them together and seeing them both on set that were you like, shit, this is going to be iconic? This is the first time they've been on screen, I think it was, since Pulp Fiction. So you've brought these two back together.
Oh no, it was.
Later.
Look, there's an art to archetypes and working with what we call icons. When I work with stars, I'm all about, am I improving their brand? Am I delivering to their audience? You know, all the levels of craft of directing are what's on my mind. And honestly, neither of these two actors, there's not a bad take. Put it like that. It's always something special from them.
The scene where you've got Bruce and Travolta talking across the table, was that like your sort of homage to the Heat scene, Pacino and De Niro? Because it played off like that.
People have pointed that out, perhaps inadvertently. I'm a big Michael Mann fan. I got to produce for Michael on Collateral with Tom Cruise and Jamie Foxx. So I'm certainly familiar with Heat. I think these two actors bring something entirely different, a similar suspense perhaps, but something entirely different from Pacino and De Niro in Heat. I think it involves a little bit of dark humor, perhaps, that where Heat was 100% intense. We have a bit of fun with our thriller.
You had also mentioned previously about the shooting schedule that, because it's sort of an independent film, you don't get as much time. How much time do you have to put a movie like this together?
Because of the false start when the island had to put in COVID restrictions, my prep was pretty good, and then we re-prepped again when we were ready to shoot. But we had to move. This is the shortest shooting schedule I've had in my whole career. But I knew that going in. I knew I had the wonderful island of Maui, and it's about an independent film. It's about exploiting your own resources correctly. So you'll notice there's not a lot of night shooting. This is maybe technical for your audience, but when you have a beautiful island like Maui, why not show it? And that moves the show along. You get higher production values. So listen, that's part of a very specific plan to capitalize when if you're prepping and the schedule is a little bit shorter than on larger studio pictures. We plan for that. I design my shots for that. And I think it all played as one thing. And I'm happy with the results. I think audiences will be too.
And having such a short time period to get the movie complete in, what was the most challenging aspect as a director on this movie?
You know what? It was a fun film, and I know people, say these things. I had a wonderful team around me, and particularly with my relationship previously with John and my new relationship with Bruce. Blake Jenner, who does a terrific job in one of our leading roles, playing his character is Bruce's character's son, and Priya Lumberg, who's new, and Cade Vu, who's a great new action star. I don't know if you noticed Cade doing flying kicks. There was something spectacular every day. So I like films with momentum. The advantage of this kind of independent photography is it's a young, quick crew. We're lean and mean, and it keeps the actors on their toes. I'm not shooting multiple takes. I'm getting the job done. I do table reads before, which Travolta is very gracious about, working with all the other actors in his roles, in his scenes. So we were ready, and it was a sprint through the movie, but it was a sprint with a great team around me.
You had mentioned as well previously Wrath of Man that you had worked on with John Travolta.
Well, called I Am Wrath.
I Am Wrath, that's it, sorry. It was a brilliant movie. It was basically Travolta goes complete taken, and it was him revisiting his action career, which is something that I think Travolta just aces. Was there ever plans for a follow-up with that? Because everyone, like, we watch it if we get friends round and a couple of beers and watch the film, and everyone's like, where's the sequel?
These are different production companies. Sometimes it's complicated. A sequel is not out of the question to either of these films. I think Paradise City deserves a sequel as well.
I would love to see a prequel as well.
That's interesting. We don't want to give too many spoilers away, but there's good reason to call it a prequel for Paradise City.
So after Paradise City, what's going to be next for you? Have you got anything else planned with Travolta?
I'm definitely looking for something else for John and I. John, I think John is aware of that. Sorry, hold on one second.
No worries.
There's two different things I actually like that I have not presented to John. So surprise, John, I'll be sending you 1 or 2 scripts here in the next month or so when they're ready. And I'm also looking at both independent film. I had so much fun on Paradise City, and studio projects. I have a new studio project we're developing now that's a bit of a larger scale. Let's just call it an effects related film. So those are inching along, too early to announce them. And I hope we're going to have a very exciting 2023 in the film work I'm doing.
And is it safe to assume you'll be bringing Travolta back into the action genre?
The action. Let's not forget how good John is at comedy.
So
yeah, that's something. I haven't done a comedy in a while, and that's something I'm looking to get back into as well. So, listen. One of the most exciting things about directing film is to have good relationships with talent of the caliber of John Travolta, and I'll include Bruce. Just fantastic to work with. So yes, of course, I'm looking for new things.
Before I let you go, your filmography was basically my childhood, so I've got a product.
I hope I didn't wreck it.
I'm gonna ask an obvious one, which you probably get asked all the time. But from when you were directing Dwayne Johnson in The Scorpion King, did you know back then he would become as big as he is now?
In Dwayne's case, it was very calculated on my part. I think even the studio was aware of this. That was his first leading role. I'm very comfortable. I have a background in theater. When I see somebody who's ready to blow up, I go with my instincts, and Dwayne definitely was. I saw Dwayne just doing his monologues in wrestling. I thought, who is this hysterical guy who looks like an amazing superhero of some kind? And when Universal offered me the choice of one of 2 movies they were rolling the next year, I knew Dwayne was going to blow up. I picked Dwayne, and then I was very careful to help find his brand. We worked on a lot. He was really game. We worked on a lot of improvisational rehearsals and things like this. I asked him, really, what are your best moves? and I'll build them into the story and into to me, action is story. Action is character. A lot of times some critics don't really appreciate that. But when I found out a guy of this size can move like Nureyev, of all the action people I've worked with, Dwayne Johnson is the most amazing, along with the charisma. For a big guy, he can move like a ballet dancer. It's just unbelievable.
Was there ever talks when you were on set of following up before Dwayne blew up?
Dwayne and I have talked about different things as well. He's a star of his stature becomes really busy. So it depends on when I can shoot something, when he can shoot something. But I'd love to work with Dwayne again. He just gave Scorpion King a nice compliment on an interview for Black Adam, which I can't wait to see. I hear it's terrific. So there's a lot of respect there. But when I work with a new star, I want to help him build a brand. But more than that, I want to pay off to international audiences. He was a new action star at a time when there hadn't been one in a while, and I knew it. So we ran with that opportunity.
That's a good way of putting it, a new action star, because the question I'm going to ask next is about an old action star. Man, Eraser. That was amazing, man.
Thank you.
That was my childhood. I remember the VHS of that. That was awesome. What was it like directing Schwarzenegger and that was balls to the wall action movie. It was unbelievable.
Thank you. I don't know. I'm very comfortable around these guys. Arnold was very welcoming to me. He was a big fan of The Mask. He basically said, if I could do that with Jim Carrey, I could do anything with him, with his image, he felt. And we teamed up on getting the movie we wanted made with the studio. I was all about 3 unique set pieces, something I hadn't seen before with Arnold. The studio wanted one more. Big Arnold Schwarzenegger hit at that point in their career, and as it turned out, we delivered, and it was happy all around, and audiences seemed to enjoy it. I particularly like casting Vanessa Williams, which in the 90s was some people were still shocked by this kind of casting, but she had the guts to be the female lead against Arnold in a very natural way, and of course, beauty and brains. But that's one of my fondest memories of shooting that picture was the scenes with Arnold and Vanessa together. And the airplane scene is my favorite stunt sequence from that show.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you about. How did you pull something like that together? Because instantly you see the 90s and you're like, is that a real plane? Are they in the sky? Because CGI from the 90s doesn't really hold up.
We did it the right way. First of all, everything is storyboarded. I storyboard these things, and that's a great example of storyboards to film. We did it shot for shot, just as we planned it, and each shot were different elements. So we took the midsection of a 747 and hung it from the highest stage at Warner Brothers, at Warner Brothers, and Arnold himself, not a stunt double, was on what was called a descender rig. It still is. Which is a cable that almost reaches natural velocity, but has a braking system. So an actor who's in shape can do it, not just stunt people. So maybe that's too technical, but we did it with some real elements like that large mid-plane set piece, along with CGI of the plane, along with a real parachuting team. And I think the actual parachuting team gives that scene. Check the scene out again. There's one shot where a parachuter doubling for Arnold is trying to unwrap himself from the silk, that he's trapped in the silk. 100% physical shot, no CGI added. It was filmed by a parachuter to parachuter, and there was a safe piece of silk tied in a certain way to the rig that he's struggling to get out of. But it makes you panic. Just the one shot makes you panic. And then we had a number of things Arnold did on stage. We made it appear he's parachuting, which is quite common. And a typical Arnold punchline at the end with a little girl. He says, "Where are you?" And she says, "Earth." And then you'll see the exact same scene in Tom Cruise's new picture. So I'll take it as an homage in the new Maverick film.
That's right. Now you've put 2 and 2 together.
So that looks familiar. I'll take it as either a random event or a bit of an homage.
And Arnold was in such good shape too, because I believe as well he had just hit his 50s at that point.
His 50th birthday, I think, was right after production. So no, he's, he's the kind of guy where you go to his house, he wants to talk to you in the weight room and, puts me on the treadmill while he works out. So even for a director, at least at that point in his career, and I'm a sporty guy, I'm happy with that. But look, I love working. There's a level of performance in action films I have always respected. When I first got out to LA as a kid, I had a job getting coffee for the group out of Stunts Unlimited. So at that time, some of the best stuntmen in the world. And all I did was go from one stunt sequence on TV or film to another with that group. And I learned stunt craft and safety. So I just have a tremendous respect for the athleticism in these action actors, the discipline all these guys and girls have. It's not just an illusion, It really does take a level of courage, care, and athleticism to do these sequences.
Did you ever see the sequel to Eraser that was released? I think it's beginning.
I recently saw it. Yeah, it's an interesting echo of some of the things we did.
So this will sound really bad on my part, but so was it good?
I will not judge my fellow directors and producers. Look, I enjoyed it. It's a charismatic, good-looking cast. They're going for something different. I was going for grit and Arnold Schwarzenegger style impact. So I think it's a bit craftier of a kind of action film. But you know what? I love movies, so I'm not the best critic. I tend to see the good in films.
That could be my downfall too sometimes. The Mask, it was classic, and I can rewatch that film over and over, and I always feel it was ahead of its time. Do you feel the same way, or is that just me?
There's two very fortunate things. It was ahead of its time, and I, in a very calculated way, tried to make sure it would be a bit timeless. So the wardrobe you'll see in Edge City, our fictional city, was a combination of sort of 1960s and 1940s, a little bit of what was contemporary in the 90s. But I had a long enough career to see some of my films age a bit with the 80s hairstyle in Elm Street 3, things like that. So I purposefully tried to make it a bit timeless. And it still plays well. It was ahead of its time in Jim Carrey and Cameron Diaz, brand new performers at the time. Cameron had never acted before. Jim was not yet a worldwide star. I took what was supposed to be a horror film and made it this comedy. I really followed my instincts. I could never have done that without the support of New Line Cinema, Mike DeLuca and Bob Shea, Toby Emmerich. Believed in the vision I had for that because no one had seen CGI applied at that time in that way. And Jim Carrey was basically a star from In Living Color, not really in demand for features yet. I think he had shot Ace Ventura, but it wasn't out yet. So I had something that I felt was wholly original, and I wanted to follow through on that for the audiences, give them something never seen before.
Were you amazed, as we the viewers, when watching that, at the things Jim Carrey can do, the impersonations?
Well, remember, I worked on each of them carefully. and I always like admitting we saved some money in the visual effects because there were some things Jim just did in makeup and wardrobe alone that needed no manipulation, that surprised me. So I was surprised sometimes on the set. In the final film, I was like a kid with a firecracker in my pocket because Jim and Cameron were at that first screening, I believe it was in Cannes, and they had never seen it. And even though I'd gone through a lot of trouble to visualize with Jim what we were going to do as the wolf face expanded and he had to put his fingers out here for the whistle and exactly how far should that be. Those things were my job to bring to the shoot. But even the fact that Jim was that surprised, I got a big kick out of that. They were both thrilled, and the chemistry between Jim and Cameron in that movie, it's one of the reasons we like to make films, is occasionally you get lightning in a bottle. And we work hard to get that lightning in a bottle, but in that case, it's really true. There is absolutely such a thing as chemistry between actors, and something I always bear in mind when we're casting.
And do you know what? See the sequels of The Mask, they needed you. You and Jim needed to come back. That's all I
wished them well. but from the time the concept was a baby, I didn't quite get that. And in comedy, you have to be 100%,
Yeah.
100% in particular in that genre. So, and the fact that Jim was doing Grinch That Stole Christmas, I think at that time, who was also green-faced and had a dog and sound effects. I just think it unraveled for him for the sequel. And it was my baby in a lot of ways, getting that film made, but I didn't quite follow the vision for the sequel. So I wish them well. But the Mask stands on its own. And I actually think there's still the potential for a sequel to the original Mask.
I agree. Okay, my final question. Could be biased, so fans out there don't hate me, but how does it feel to have directed the best Nightmare on Elm Street sequel?
Can I just say it's a bittersweet. I'm very proud that it comes through that way. I have the reasons I believe people remember it so uniquely out of the series. But that was Wes Craven's brilliant original first film. And it was my first directing opportunity to do number 3. They weren't even sure they were going to carry on after number 2 because it wasn't that successful from different points of view. It still stands on its own, but and I convinced them we should do number 3 and you should let me direct it. And I didn't realize Wes had parted ways briefly, because he did go back to work with New Line. But I thought I was going to get to work with Wes. I thought he was going to mentor me or something. And so I didn't mean to. I'm proud of the film. I'm particularly proud of the performances. No pre-CGI, all physical effects. Patricia Arquette's first film. So again, I've gotten to bring great people the first opportunity in some cases. But the heart of the film are the kids, and the Dream Warriors concept that Frank Darabont and I developed further from Wes's original screenplay is something I actually believe in, that's in all of us. And I worked obviously part-time, but I assisted at a halfway house for suicidal teens before we wrote that draft. And some of the camaraderie or depending on each other I saw in those halls were something I really wanted to capture in the film. And I think it's one of the things that makes the film a bit evergreen. People still enjoy it. I think the heart of it is that team of kids coming together, pre-Avengers, pre all the superhero films, to find their superpowers in their dreams. That's still it's something I truly believe in. I think it's a very universal concept.
I definitely think if they're gonna do the Halloween 2018 thing and bring it back with Heather and maybe convince Robert back, you are the man to direct the
Well,
reboot.
thank you.
That's all I have time for, man. It's been amazing speaking to you. Feels like I've been waiting since Nightmare on Elm Street Part 3 to talk to you.
Well, thank you for your kind words, and I've really enjoyed this as well.
It's been great, and congratulations on the release of Paradise City. It was amazing, and I can't wait to see what you and John bring to the table in 2023.
We have a couple things. I have a couple things up my sleeve, so maybe this interview will be a surprise to John. He knows we're looking for something.
Thanks so much for your time, Chuck. It's been amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you. See you later.